Welcome to the Disrupt Your Career podcast, brought to you by Claire Harbour
and Antoine Tirard. We're passionate about helping everyone find fulfillment in their work life.
We believe that big, messy, uncharted career changes are inevitable, and it's up to you to decide.
Will you take control and disrupt, or allow yourself to be disrupted?
We wrote the book about it, and now we share here our conversations with other thinkers in this crucial area.
Settle down and get ready to listen to this dose of wisdom.
So I am delighted to be welcoming onto this episode of the Disrupt Your Career Author Chat my old friend and our previous guest, Janine Mathó, who is the author of a wonderful book called Your Opus, which is due to be published in early 2026. Janine, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure. Let's start with the origin question. Why did you write this book? And as importantly, how did you write it?
I wrote Live Your Opus for the ambitious person and the high achiever who's done everything, quote unquote, right, and still feels like something's missing. So people who maybe they've got the degree, they've got the job, they've got the next job, the promotion, the paycheck, the house, the car, whatever it is that, quote unquote, success is for them. And they're still standing there going, is this it? And I wanted to give talented people permission to choose themselves again, to choose a life that actually fits. And I know what it's like to feel like that because I lived it. You know, I had the roles, I had the titles, I had the respect, but underneath of it, I was exhausted, I was depleted, I was disconnected. I would say I was high functioning, but not flourishing. And as you know, my own burnout in 2019, which was sort of at the same time as my mother was killed in a car crash, forced a pause. And in that pause, so many questions surfaced. So who am I without my title and my affiliation? What matters most to me really? And there was one question that stuck with me and still does, which is a long question, but it's how can ambitious people attain healthy, meaningful success that lasts without losing themselves or what matters most to them along the way? And that question has become sort of a quest for me. And with the book, I started with the data. So I poured over data from every Future of Work report and every study on employee engagement or the state of the workplace that I could find. And I quickly learned that burnout and the issues that I was facing with chronic stress and disconnection and this sense of not having enough meaning, they weren't unique to me. So this is an epidemic. And some statistics that stick with me, and I repeat these all the time, people are always shocked, that 7 in 10 people are living with symptoms of chronic stress or burnout. I think that's frightening, and 45% of leaders report feeling overwhelmed most of the time. And I think that number's probably a lot higher, actually.
Yeah, yes.
From the pressure. And on top of that, you've got people staying in jobs that drain them and then don't feel meaningful. So meaning feels elusive. These trends reflect a collective depletion of energy, morale, and connection that in the book I call an emotional recession. So an emotional recession, like an economic one, it signals widespread and unsustainable depletion, not of money, but energy, morale, and human connection. So it's not just burnout. It's this collective sense of detachment and exhaustion from ourselves, one another, our world, and the work we do. The energy that we need to fuel innovation, collaboration, and growth is running dangerously low. So I would say burnout, disconnection, and mental health struggles, and the search for meaning, acting like rolling blackouts across industries. So for this book, I interviewed over 200 professionals, execs, educators, founders, people who were navigating reinvention, life or career inflection points, career pivots. I wanted to use their experience as a sounding board to better understand the data that I was seeing, but also to understand what worked for them or didn't in turning things around. Because, of course, while I was interviewing people, I was kind of going through my own burnout recovery and asking myself the same questions that maybe they had asked themselves. And, of course, with my background, so I brought everything I learned in my 25 years in learning leadership and the future of work. And I dove deep into new areas, new to me. So neuroscience, positive psychology, ancient wisdom traditions, and stories, of course. And I built a practical soul level path back to yourself. And at first, the way that I sort of share it in the book didn't look like that. And at first, it was just for me. And eventually, it was refined for my clients and through programs that I led. And then now, of course, codified in Live Your Opus. Maybe I should also be clear because sometimes people hear my story and think, oh, it's a book about burnout. And I want to say it's not a book about burnout, though a lot of people arrive here from that place. But this is a book about what happens after you realize that the path that you were told would lead to fulfillment, or the path that you chose because you thought it would lead to fulfillment doesn't. And yet so many of us follow this version of success that we didn't author. So the book is about reclaiming authorship, about choosing a definition of success that's meaningful, that's alive, that's sustainable. And then, of course, there's the real work in the book, which is figuring out how to get out of your own way so that you can actually live that life.
Absolutely. And yes, Eve, as you say, even putting aside the question of burnout, it's about throwing all the cards up in the air and figuring out what does my definition of success and path towards that look like, and how can I shape that? As you say, the reasons for getting to that desire may be many, and yours was burnout. But in the end, it's a book for everybody, isn't it? With a methodology and a reckoning that is pertinent to anybody of any age.
And maybe also permission. Because I think the hard part is once you've sort of forged your way in life, you think, well, I can't turn around and change it. Like, not in the big ways. And actually, sometimes you can.
Beautiful. Now, without giving away everything, I'd love it if you tell us about some of the key concepts and messages that are in the book and get our salivation going so that we all want to buy it in February or when exactly it's going to be out.
At the sort of basic level, this book sits on two core truths. So truths that I think once people see them can change everything, at least from the get-go. The first is that your life is your opus. So an opus is a beautiful body of work, a masterpiece, and your life is this living, breathing body of work that you get to compose, and only you get to compose it. So the first is your life is your opus. It's not something you have to chase or prove. It's something you shape and you feel. And then the second is that you, not your job, not your resume, not your achievements, not your marriage, not your children, you are your greatest work. And so these two basic mindset shifts, your life is your opus and you are your greatest work. It's about building a life and career from the inside out. And of course, the book includes frameworks and a path to begin living in this new way, right? To take these mindsets on the road, so to speak. So the Opus 8 energy system is there, and that's a method that helps people reconnect with their physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual energy, because sustainable success needs fuel, not just goals and action. And then there's the 12-week journey, which is the essence of the book, which helps the reader move through 4 stages. So connect, dream, compose, and embark, and helps them think about and reconnect with themselves, realign their work and life, and start to actually live from that place of alignment, not just think about it. So it's a very action-oriented journey. It's almost like you were in the room with me or another coach, because I do believe that everyone should have access to these kinds of tools. And the book helps people break free from, most of us are driven by thought loops and expectations that we never chose. So definitions of success handed down by parents or systems or cultures. So we explore everything and anything that gets in the way of breaking free from that. So we explore fear of other people's opinions, the upper limit problem, the zone of genius, the science of mindset and neuroplasticity, sort of all of it, but within those 4 stages of the journey. So connect, dream, compose, and embark, sort of dealing with the right concepts at the right time in the stage so that we can break free and build something real for us.
That's fabulous. If I understand correctly, there is going to be a workbook that goes with the book so that it doesn't just remain on the page, but it contains a tool that we can then play with and experiment with and work on.
Yes, thanks for the reminder. The book itself has many exercises in it as it's moving people through that journey, but the workbook adds many, many more, because of course we all come at this work with our own experiences and our own ways of learning. The workbook is a key piece for that.
Definitely. And the number of read but not acted on books that most people have on their bookshelves is quite large. So any tool that encourages us more deeply into doing the work rather than just reading about it is a bonus. So thank you for making it that way. So finally, what would be wonderful if you could share some sense of the kinds of stories or cases or illustrations that are in the book, something to get us imagining what sort of things and people and stories we might be reading about when we get in there.
This book is full of real life vignettes, and not just to illustrate, but sometimes to validate, because when you coach, the way that you do and I do, you begin to see patterns and you see
Oh, yeah.
how many talented, high achieving, ambitious people get in their own way, not because something's wrong with them, right? So nothing's wrong with us, but it's because we're running scripts many times that we didn't write. And so I included dozens of stories that reflect the patterns, moments when clients or folks who shared their stories with me hit walls or chose reinvention or faced their own resistance. So we can talk about Andre, and Andre was an exec who I like to say he mistook speed for leadership. So a very highly respected senior executive. So the kind of leader who energized a room and delivered results under pressure and built his reputation on decisiveness and speed. A person constantly in motion, a bit of a force of nature. But as his career advanced, that sort of very way of being, especially the very habit, I think, that once served him, this relentless pace. And I would say if there was one thing he was known for, it was the relentless pace. And that became his constraint. So his team struggled to keep up. Execution started to falter. Trust began to erode. And he had essentially outgrown the leadership style that got him there. And I see this a lot. Sometimes as leaders, we forget if we are working from early morning to late at night plus weekends and expecting our team to do the same. We are asking everyone. Andre was asking everyone to work at a relentless pace, and that only works for so long until it doesn't. And for him, the shift came from fatigue. And just one morning, he sat down in a meeting and realized he had nothing left to give. It was that simple. This isn't working anymore. And I think that was important that he noticed it, first of all.
Yes.
Because it's this moment when he sought out coaching, but he also began to intentionally evolve his leadership style. So really thinking about, okay, the way I've been working isn't working anymore. What do I want this to look like? How do I want to lead? How do I want people to feel when they work for me? How do I want to feel when I'm doing this work? And he reframed his values. He made sort of presence a key value. So before, I think output and productivity would have been more the value. And this is very common, obviously. And he had to find his rhythm. So he made managing his energy a leadership competency. So rather than thinking, well, if I slow down, I'm going to be less important, or if I slow down, I won't get as much done, he realized that actually you have to schedule in the time to manage your own energy, both to get in physical exercise and movement, to get in thinking time, to get in time with people you want to connect with. So the result was a much more sustainable type of leader. The team was more sustainable. The team felt more capable. They were capable. They were just tired. And a renewed sense, I think, of integrity. And you and I talked about integrity before. So he slowed down to lead better, actually, which I think is hard to do when you're at a very senior level. And this way of working has been working for you for a long time.
Exactly. I mean, we tend to build the beginnings of our careers based on how productive we can be. It serves well in early careers. It just doesn't necessarily serve well when you're running a company with 10,000 people in it. That's a beautiful story. Thank you.
I can share a couple of others. I mean, I'll share one. I think that because I work with a lot of founders, I can tell a very short story about a woman named Vanessa who was building a purpose-driven business. And she expected, when she left her full-time job and she came into this founder role for herself, she expected to be spending time on the things that, quote unquote, mattered. For her, that was strategy, client development, getting her product and services organized and pitching them. But what she encountered was much more personal. So she encountered her own resistance. She encountered procrastination, perfectionism, fear of rejection, like you name it. She faced it. And she said to me, I thought I'd be out there pitching clients, but here I was sitting at home working on fear. I was learning to believe in myself still, even though I had all of this expertise. And I see this happens a lot when you leave an organization and a leadership role and you move into your own work, sometimes you feel like, actually, do I know how to do this? Even though you have all of this expertise, you feel like a beginner again. So in the end, I think because she focused on mastering the one most important thing in the business, which was herself, she ended up growing her business. But I share it because I see this so much in founders. They're not considering the work that they need to do on themselves to become the person who builds the kind of company that they're trying to develop. So you're starting in one place and you say, okay, I want to build a company that does this, but you don't have to become the person who does that. There's a gap and there's growth that needs to happen.
Indeed. Thank you for that reminder. I think that's so important. And there is unfortunately, still very small proportion of founders that get this or see this or get the opportunity to have it shown to them. So I am hopeful that your book will do more to encourage people to consider that option. You and I know it. We need no convincing, but the world at large of founders and leaders of all kinds and people. I mean, people are leaders. I tend to believe it's not just about corporate structures or even created startup structures. It's everywhere we are in life. The wonderful Marshall Goldsmith quote of "What got you here won't get you there" is doubly applicable in this scenario. And if your book and your workbook can do anything to get people to see that more clearly and to act on it, then the world will be a better place. I'm extremely grateful to you, Janine, for bringing your insight and your hard work in crafting this book and making sure that it's what the world needs right now. And I have no doubt that it is. So the audience will get all the opportunities, all the links, all the clicks to be buying that. And I just want to thank you here live and now for coming and sharing your insights and your beautiful vision of how much better we could all be in our own opus. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire.
We hope you enjoyed hearing from this month's guest as much as we did.
Do go and check out our work on disrupt-your-career.com and come back soon. Thank you.